Okay, so before I actually get into this review, I do want to say, after I'm done giving my rating and everything, I will touch slightly on the budget of this film. Very slightly. I won't really talk about it. It'll seem more like a bullet point or a footnote. But I do want to talk a little bit about the recent Rotten Tomatoes controversy that has to do with this film, because I don't want to wait until my Monday episode of Last Week in Cinema to actually bitch and groan about the situation. So Justice League is the movie that every comic book fan has been waiting for ever since we saw the first Avengers film and saw that big ensemble, like connecting universe film can be done, and it can be done great. In this film, it's been a bit since Superman died during Batman vs. Superman, and an alien called Steppenwolf and his army of parademons have come to Earth to find a couple of ancient artifacts that that'll have catastrophic events for the entire planet. So Batman and Wonder Woman must assemble this team of metahumans, including the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg, in order to save the world. So I'm going to be focusing a lot of attention on the characters as well as their actors, their respective actors' performances. And it's going to be for all the Justice League members as well as the antagonist Steppenwolf. But who better to start this off than the leader of the Justice League, Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, who is portrayed for the third time by Ben Affleck. In Batman vs. Superman, I actually thought that he was amazing. I had even said that if he's given a bit more time in the universe, he could actually be the best live-action Batman that we've ever had. And, well, like I said, I just need a little bit more time to figure that out, but he was amazing because I believe that he is the first actor to actually show that Bruce Wayne was not the persona of Bruce Wayne. Batman was the true persona. Bruce Wayne died when he watched his parents get executed. And I felt like he was the only live-action actor to actually bring that across in his performance. And just now that I say all of that because in this film, all the charisma and personality that Affleck brought to the DCEU version of Batman, that's all gone. I saw him more as Bruce Wayne in this than Batman, and my fiance actually said that she just saw Ben Affleck, who was more like he was craving a BLT than he was trying to give a decent performance. And you know what? I was actually thinking about it while really formulating my thoughts for this review. She actually does have a point. He just looks really tired and disinterested. And this is obviously more evidence to the fact that he's most likely, I'm going to say at this point, 86% chance. There's an 86% chance that he's not coming back as Batman after this. Batman also didn't have much to do in this movie. I mean, the lack of Batman fight sequences, despite him kicking a few parademons, and yes, I mean actually kicking. There's a few where he's just like, yeah, you can't see my leg in the camera. But it just showed that Batman really had no place in the battles. And you know what? I actually had that complaint with Batman vs. Superman. In the very last battle with Doomsday, he doesn't really even do anything except for run away from laser eyes. And of course we have Gal Gadot returning as Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman. Now, I've criticized her in the past, as you guys remember from my reviews of both Batman vs. Superman, as well as her own standalone film. I didn't like her in BVS. I didn't think she could act, but I did think that she really improved in her own standalone film, though I still think that she has a ways to go before I'll think that she's a good actress. In Justice League, she was a bit in the middle. She was serviceable. Her performance was serviceable. But everything that we got of her character, as far as like her personality and her overall motivations for why she does the things that she does, they're all just thrown out the window. She was basically reduced to someone who's still crying over her dead boyfriend. And now for those three newcomers, the ones who have only been shown in like small cameo footage, including Cyborg, who his little cameo in Batman vs. Superman looked like a very shitty 90s sci-fi TV show episode. First, we have Ezra Miller, who portrays the first feature film iteration of Barry Allen, aka The Flash. Now, I, like most people, love the CW Barry Allen, as well as what Grant Gustin has given to the role. But Ezra Miller's Flash feels like a different kind from the TV show, and it actually works out in its favor. He was actually one of my favorite characters in the movie. Ezra just made this version of Barry Allen a very endearing and likable person who's very vulnerable and just scared of people in general, as well as the world as a whole. And I mostly found him entertaining. I was most entertained by the scenes that involved him using his Speed Force, you know, where he's actually speeding off and doing shit. And while those are pretty entertaining, I couldn't help but look at them and think, yeah, these are okay, but they don't really touch the Quicksilver scenes from X-Men Days of Future Past, as well as X-Men Apocalypse. I mean, nothing against Ezra Miller or the character, it just really stood out to me. It made everything feel a bit underwhelming because I was comparing the scenes without really meaning to. Second, we have Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. Despite a good performance from Momoa, we don't really get much of a character from Aquaman. He's a background character who does actually become a background character, not being very useful as a whole. I was originally worried from the trailers that he was going to become that one-liner guy, but luckily it doesn't get to that level. And I wish I could say more about his character, but because he was put more in the background than everybody else, I noticed less about him, so I can't say anything more. And lastly, we have Ray Fisher portraying Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. First, before I get to my complaints, I'll just go ahead and get out the way. I think that, I almost said Ezra Miller. I think Fisher was pretty good in his performance, just nothing notable. Now that we're past that, here are my actual complaints about Cyborg. Seeing the character that my fiance introduced to me through the show Teen Titans, and comparing him to the version in Justice League, the fun was completely taken out of the character. He's just very uninteresting as a person, and he was reduced to a character that just interacts with things. You know, he's the hacker of the group who occasionally gets to fly or shoot at something with his hand cannon. Also, the CGI on Cyborg was probably the most noticeable, with sometimes being worse than others. And as far as his appearance, to me, he doesn't look like a machine. His metal body looked like a giant shard of glass or crystal. It was just a huge eyesore and really bothered me. There is one more character that I do want to talk about, but I want to get Steppenwolf out of the way. One positive. The voice actor, it was actually really good. It's Ciarán Hinds, who a lot of people know as, his name's, what was his name? Raider or something? One of the wildlings from Game of Thrones. Everybody knows him as Raider. And he does a really good job. I mean, he's a great voice actor. But that's really it. The way that Steppenwolf is, he's a terrible villain. Just being there just to be there. His motivations are hinted at, but never really fully established. The CGI on him is fucking atrocious. And he's barely a footnote in the film. There were actually times where I had forgotten that he was even a presence, let alone a threat. And I have saved what is probably the most anticipated response for a character, and that is Superman, portrayed once again by Henry Cavill. Now, I'm one of the few people who enjoy Man of Steel, and actually think that Cavill's performance in Man of Steel was really good. But this Superman was so much better. This actually felt more like the Superman that everybody was waiting for, that everybody grew up with because of Christopher Reeve, but Henry Cavill was still able to make it his own. And as far as the actual character of Superman, this is by far the best on-screen iteration that I've ever seen. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is probably not going to be a very popular opinion, but Henry Cavill, hands down, gives the best performance in the entire movie. We all know about the whole thing with the reshoots and Cavill's contract to keep a mustache because he's working on the next Mission Impossible movie, and his character for some reason needs a mustache. I don't know why I did this, but we all knew that his face was gonna look a little bit weird because they were gonna put like CGI over it. In some scenes, it really doesn't look too bad unless you're like really, really looking for it. But in the very first scene where we see him, it's really bad. And the other times, when you actually notice it, it either looks like his nose is too small for his face, or that the space in between his upper lip and his nose was just way too wide. Now onto the story, which is pretty much flawed all over. This film actually felt like two different directors took a shot at it with at different times, and the changes were not seamless to me. And that fact is actually really a shame because I know that it's neither director's fault, because the first director had that terrible family tragedy and he had to step down for obvious reasons, and then the second director came in and basically had to pick up where he left off, as well as doing the extra reshoots and whatnot. But that's really where the least of all the problems spur from. The vast majority of the problems with this film comes from the fact that there was a mandated runtime, that Warner Brothers, the leadership, demanded that the film be 2 hours or less, and because of that, there were scenes that were either had no payoff, or they just start for no fucking explanation whatsoever, and we hardly get any scenes where the characters are interacting as either friends, acquaintances, or co-workers, or whatever the hell they are in this movie. With the rushed pace of the movie, because it's very obvious that the filmmakers rushed them. Oh, excuse me. Fuck. The filmmakers rushed with the production, post-production, and the reshoots in order to keep the release date, as well as keep the film under 2 hours. We get many scenes that just don't mean anything and don't explain anything that's going on, like, what's the connection between Aquaman and this fucking little, fishing town, and why is Wonder Woman randomly fighting this terrorist group? This makes no sense. Are they ever going to explain it? No? Well, I guess we're never going to find out. And of course, I've already mentioned a few missteps in the CGI, including Cyborg, Steppenwolf, and Cavill's upper lip. But as a whole, this is some of the worst CGI I've seen all year, especially for a film this expensive. The CGI gets so bad that there was a scene where it shows Superman getting ready to punch Steppenwolf, and a terrible CGI, including the camera angle at which it was being shot, it looked like it felt more like I was watching a Let's Player play an Injustice video game than it felt like I was watching a big blockbuster movie. Think about it this way, that scene made me think of the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson scene from The Mummy Returns. It was that bad. Despite all the complaints, the film can be fun. It just wasn't very fun for me. You guys, some of you guys may actually enjoy it a lot more than I did, but at the end of the day, I really didn't like this movie. And I'm going to give Justice League 1.5 reels. It's not worth it in my opinion. I really wanted to enjoy this movie, I really did, but at the end of the day, this movie just was not fun for me at all. I really didn't like it, despite those two really good performances in Miller and Cavill. Okay, so I did promise earlier that I would talk about a couple of things. Real quick, Justice League is the second most expensive film ever made at $300 million, not adjusted for inflation. And this film, a film like that with that big a budget should not look this bad. I'm just saying. Like I said, really quick. But what I really wanted to talk about was the whole Rotten Tomatoes controversy, where people are saying that Rotten Tomatoes was basically withholding the score, the Tomato Meter score, until a couple hours before the first showings, and I wholeheartedly believe that they actually meant to hide it. And you know what? I think it's especially because Warner Brothers is one of the owners of Rotten Tomatoes. They were trying to hide it. I do actually believe that. I'll get more into it on my Monday episode of Last Week in Cinema, but I really wanted to say it now so that I didn't come back later and bitch, gripe, and complain and groan, moan, whatever the fuck you want to say, and it seemed like, you know, I'm just agreeing with everybody else, but no, I actually believe this. This is fucking bullshit. Anyway, that'll do it for me today. Please subscribe if you haven't already for more reviews and content, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and farewell until the next video. Bye, guys.